Bruce Campbell joins me now. He's a portfolio manager with StoneCastle Asset Management, and he's here to deliver the weekly StoneCastle Cannabis Week Report. Bruce, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me in. Another good day to talk about pot stocks, right?
Well, I got to think that it's the equivalent of sort of scratching a scab. It just keeps getting worse and worse the more you scratch, but we can't help it.
Yeah, it's like 2001 in technology.
2001. Ooh, that suggests we've hit the bottom and we're bouncing back almost.
Well, we're starting to see a few signs of that from some of the technical indicators that we watch.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What gives, so do you actually feel that we might be sort of at the bottom? Or do you think that there could be another leg down, as a lot of people are suggesting?
I certainly think that we're close. Obviously there's going to be pressure from tax loss selling that could occur over the next month here, or I guess more like 6 weeks. But we are seeing some technical signs that are encouraging. We saw these technical signs as well at the end of August, and obviously we saw another down leg from there. But we are starting to see these technical signs again. If you look at kind of individual stock charts and some of the technicals that we track, you're starting to see a weakening in the downside momentum. So that's all we're really seeing at this point in time. It's not any like raw, like we're going to take off and go to the moon, but you need that first, right? Especially with all the damage that's been done. You probably have to have a period where, the momentum just is neutral, if anything, before you could potentially get a catalyst, which, probably comes at the end of that tax loss selling, and probably comes with, maybe that Cannabis 2.0 or the SAFE Act in the US.
Right. Okay. And so the the Curaleaf and Select deal is being repriced. What's the implications of that?
Well, obviously, if you were a Select shareholder, then you're going to get less. It was about I think close to $500 million less that they're offering. And so, that's significant for that deal. But also we look at it with some of the other deals. So if you look at the Origin House and Cresco deal, that spread has blown out. So it seems like the market's anticipating that there's going to be a reprice on that deal as well. So, now with these deals that were announced that got held up by, the antitrust regulations in the US, it seems like the market thinks that they could be repriced. And if you're a manager or you're CEO of a company that made that deal, you probably have a pretty strong case to go back and say, yeah, we have a deal, but look at the multiples, and depending on what your break fee is, you might go and exercise that, or else just try to renegotiate the deal.
Right. So one of the other big companies that actually has 3 transactions that were under scrutiny from the Department of Justice was Harvest Health and Recreation. Have you been following that story?
We have, yeah. I mean, there hasn't been anything from a repricing standpoint there, but certainly the market is concerned that could be what we see going forward.
Right. So what do you think the effect of this could be on the Origin House Cresco Labs transaction?
Well, you've already seen the Origin House. It's dropped. Like if you look at sort of historically where that spread was, it was as tight. It was kind of 16% to begin with, and it tightened up to kind of in the sort of 8% range, and now it's blown back out, so it's 34%. So the market's telling you something. There's people voting with their stock, and they're saying that they think it will be repriced here. And I mean that would make sense given how much damage has been done and what the valuations look like compared to when they signed the deal.
So Hexo is obviously a company that's suffered some downturn, and as a result they've closed down their Beamsville facility, which they just paid over $200 million for not so long ago, and that seems to be indicative of further pain in the sector to come, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of issues there. Obviously the first is that, as you mentioned, they just paid, a large sum of money for this not too long ago, and the asset value versus what they paid are two different things. And so, there's going to be some impairments at some point in time, not just with Hexo, but with a number of other companies that the investors are concerned about, and how much of that's been built into the stock prices. I think there's certainly some. but those discussions will happen with auditors at the end of this year and maybe even next year. So, there's going to be potentially some overhang there. How much of that's been built in, I don't know. That's one of those things that we won't know until kind of it happens. So that's issue number one. But number two is that, we took a look at production capacity in Canada, and we took a look and thought that, based on what we see from funded and in completion, there's probably somewhere around 3 million kilograms of capacity that's going to come into the system. And at the same time, if you look at some of the other reports that have been published by, the accountants or the different investment firms, they think that, the number that is going to be consumed is only somewhere around 1 million. So there's a pretty significant difference between those two. Obviously, some of it will go offshore, but, not all of it will. And so as a result, we could continue to see price compression. We could see more facilities like this Hexo one that could potentially be shut down in the future.
You bet. So there seems to be a lot of things happening that are arguably not so great for the LPs and are good for the black market. Quebec moving the legal age to 21 is a case in point. What kind of impact? I mean, is that just heaping pain on misery?
It sure seems to, from my perspective. One of the big policy reasons for this cannabis legalization was to get it out of the black market and get it into a legalized market. And this seems to be driving it the other way. If you're under 21 in Quebec, well, now you don't have access to it. You're going to just go back to the black market. So it seems like a step backwards to moving towards trying to reduce the consumption from the black market.
Sure. Okay, and Canopy Growth Corp released of a bunch of product SKUs. What does that tell you?
Yeah, I mean, they did sort of a little show for the media, and they had, a number of different products. They had, some sparkling waters, they had, edibles, all kinds of different products. So it just shows you, kind of what they've done behind the scenes as far as development goes, what they're ready to roll out. And that is, again, we've talked about the conversion from, sort of the mainstream population who haven't used cannabis probably since they were in high school to now using it in a completely different delivery format and, getting it, being able to pick their experience and deliver that in some other format than, lighting a dried flower on fire. Yeah,
no kidding, eh? And celebrities seem to be getting more and more into the mix. We had Rob Gronkowski yesterday here. Greg Norman is getting into the CBD game. Do you think that's going to be sort of a prerequisite differentiator for CBD companies as they try to elbow each other out of the limited environment market?
Well, it certainly seems like that's how they're trying to differentiate. I mean, you think about, just as an example, in the, sort of the topical pain cream area, Icy Hot, has Shaq as their spokesman, and I think most people would probably associate that with Shaq with that product, and it's the same with this. They're trying to look for celebrity endorsements, and in Greg Norman's case, he's actually getting into the the business with partners as well, just like with the Gronk. That's gonna continue to be their differentiation. If they can, sort of hook their name to that, then I think it goes further. I'm quite surprised that given that I think her baby shower, Kim Kardashian had CBD products, that she hasn't done something along those lines yet in a big way, partnering up. But I'm sure that's only will happen in time, right?
Right, no kidding. Saskatchewan is eliminating the lottery from the dispensary acquisition game. Do you think that's a good move on their part, and should Ontario follow?
Well, certainly that's been one of the, if you talk to any LP, that's their real pinch point, right? Is the fact that they haven't been able to distribute the product the way they wanted because there's not any stores. Alberta's done a good job of that, but the rest of the country, specifically BC and Ontario, have done a horrible job. So, if everyone opened that up and it just went free competition, you have to go through the regulations, but if you want to apply, you can. Then that's going to certainly bring the amount of cannabis to the public and be on sort of every street corner like liquor is now. Then it's going to have a probably significant impact. So we saw Saskatchewan make that move. They've also been pretty progressive in Saskatchewan with the online sales, but now we really need to see BC and Ontario do it. And then, maybe at that point in time, you're going to start to see that wave or that flood of products starting to hit the shelves, especially with the new 2.0 products. And that's going to really drive the sales of some of these LPs.
Yeah. All right, Bruce. Well, as usual, awesome conversation. And we'll look forward to having you back here again next week. Thanks for joining me today.
Okay, have a great weekend.
You too.
Filthy.